This is The Clash, where the real world clashes with a true Christian worldview. Join former professional wrestler Chris Whaley, known as the Masked Saint, who is an author, pastor, and teacher that brings his wrestling skills into the squared circle and tackles real-life issues. Along with Jeff Dixon, best-selling author, internationally known teacher, leader, and pastor who is not afraid to tackle the tough issues of the world we live in. Together they form a tag team of wisdom in The Clash.
Hi, welcome. This is The Clash. My name is Jeff Dixon, and I'm with
Chris Whaley.
And once again, we're here taking real life and allowing it to clash into a Christian worldview. And hopefully when we're done, Chris, we give some folks some things to think about, maybe pray about, and hopefully make their life better. And we want to entertain,
Right.
Because that's who we are. Anyway, today though, this is an interesting episode, and you know, I've been worried about it because this is the worry episode, and I know that nobody out there just watching us has ever worried about anything.
Oh, no.
But I guess as we get started, let's just talk for a minute about worry. Why? Not the things that people worry about, but why do we worry? What is that about us that lends itself to worrying?
I wish I had a great answer for that because I'll be very honest with you. I'm all state in worrying. I mean, I do that, and it drives my wife crazy on some of the stupid things that I worry about. But I think the big thing is people worry about things that they can't control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, worry, doesn't it tend to be projecting sometimes into the future? I mean, we're worrying about things that are yet out there to come, right? We're worrying about things that haven't happened yet. And to me, one of the things that I always try to remind people of, and it's just a struggle that we all have, is, but the future's not here yet.
Right.
And so as we worry, as we start thinking about things that could be, it really does let people spiral down a rabbit hole of just all of the what ifs and what could be's. And I think that sometimes that's really, I think it's destructive.
Yeah. And, for us being pastors or Christians, it's not a good reflection on the Lord.
Yeah.
When we take worry to the degree that some people take it to.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty pumped about the second part of this show where we talk about how to overcome it.
Oh, you know how? Thank goodness, 'cause I was worried about that too. I didn't know what we were going to talk about. So that's good. That's good.
No, but the first part, Jeff, you look at the things that, what would you think would be the number one thing that most people worry about?
Well, me personally, I worry about people missing the show each week.
Yeah.
Now that's where I am personally. But I mean, I think probably one of the biggest worries for a lot of people is maybe money. I would think that tends to be a big one. And when I say that, I would think people worry about not having enough money.
Right.
I personally would love to worry about having too much money.
Oh, that would be a great worry.
But I mean, does that track with what you've found so far? I mean, money?
Finances are a big deal. Matter of fact, I'll have something to say about it later, but that was one of my big worries until I did something about it. And I wrote this down. I had a wonderful mentor years ago who used to say this to me. He said, "Chris, if what you're worried about were to happen, would it be the end of the world?" And I never asked myself that question, but and you can ask yourself that question too. If the things that you're worried about were to happen, would it be the end of the world? And 99% of the time, 99.9% of the time, it's not the end of the world.
Sure. And And the bulk of what we worry about doesn't really happen the way we're worrying about it, it seems.
Right.
Money being a stressor, I mean, and everybody, I mean, we all know that money doesn't buy happiness, although we'd all like to try. But money is one of those universal kind of struggles that people have.
Right.
And it's a necessity that we need for life, or we want for life. And so, I mean, I think there is a natural tendency where worry is understandable for a lot of people. But I mean, have you ever met anybody that's just absolutely just paralyzed, though, because all they can think about is money, money, money?
Oh, yeah. And one of the people that I know that worries about it the most is a multimillionaire.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy could spend a lot of money every day until his last day on this earth physically, and he wouldn't spend all of his money.
Yeah.
But yet, he's just consumed with worrying about somebody's going to get what he's got, or he's not getting what he should be getting, and it just, drives him crazy, drives his wife crazy, and it drives everybody crazy.
Well, that's kind of where I was going too, because it's I have noticed that people who have money worry about keeping it or getting more or having it taken or losing the money.
Right.
And I think in that moment, and again, we'll kind of cover this, I'm sure, in the second half of the show, in that moment, we've allowed money to become something that it was never intended to be.
Absolutely.
It's no longer a resource. It becomes something that we worship that controls our life.
That's exactly right.
And then that's when worry sets in. Okay. Well, I mean, I nailed the money one. do you have, what do you have on your list of
I think people
stuff?
worry about their health.
Yeah.
You get a little tick in your side or something. Oh my goodness, what's that? Is it this? Is it that? Or maybe they get a little pain in the chest or something and freak out. They're going to have a heart attack. And people do some crazy things worrying about their health.
Sure.
And so that's one that I'm pretty good on. I don't have that on my list of worry things for Chris. But how about you? Do you worry about your health?
No. I mean, to me, that's not one either. I mean, I'm hoping that nobody out there does. But the thing about it is, I think a word of wisdom that someone gave me one time is that when you're healthy, health never crosses your mind. If something's wrong with you, if you're sick, you can't have any other thought
But that.
You obsess over it.
Right.
And so if you're blessed with good health, fantastic, enjoy it and thank God for it by all means. But if you're not healthy, then sure, that becomes the focus. And then think about it. I mean, how many people we know that struggle with an illness, struggle with the disease, struggle with some type of health issue, and all of a sudden their whole world becomes defined by that health issue. And it's different. But this is specifically about worry. So you can't do a whole lot about the health issue itself. I mean, you got to deal with it. You're going to have it treated. You're going to have to take care of it or do what you have to do to prevent it or make sure it doesn't happen again. But it becomes the obsession or the worry over it that can become so destructive. Because I also know people who are, some of the sickest people I know, but yet you never know it by looking at them. They seem to navigate it well, and they don't worry about it.
Right.
That's what I want to be. I don't ever want to have to worry about those kind of things.
Right. You ever had any hypochondriacs in your church?
Oh yeah. And they're kind of interesting. There's always something wrong with them. It's kind of excuse me. You ask how you're doing. Oh, it's terrible. I mean, you always know the answer before you ask it. Yeah,
and you learn with some people not to ask them how they're doing because it's going to be a long one.
Long conversation.
But this one guy I know that's always worried about his health. I thought he'd be a real good thing on his tombstone. I told you I was sick.
Told you I felt bad. Yeah, no doubt.
There you go.
Let me throw another one out there because I know this is a real life struggle for folks too. But I think jobs, employment, job security. Sometimes I think that we live in a culture sometimes that is worried about their job and having a job or not keeping a job or it ties back into the money one, right? My job doesn't pay me enough money. because free jobs are easy to find, but the ones that will pay and pay bills and give you a career or vocation, that becomes a little bit different.
Yeah, and yet, people that also change jobs so much because of worry. I mean, in my childhood, the people that were in my folks' circle of friends, they were on the same job. I mean, my uncle worked for the same place for 40 years. My dad, 44 years. And other people, longevity. And now, I mean, people go through jobs one after another. And so it gives them a lot to worry about.
Sure. I mean, and I think there is a lot to that. It is a generational thing. I think as the generation that our fathers and their fathers came through, I mean, they really did. They would work a job and they would become almost lifers at that job, and they would work at it a long, long time. When you stepped into ministry, you did ministry for a long, long time. I mean, that was a long, long stretch, a long run. I mean, I've been doing it a long time. But no, we have moved into an era where most times the degree that you might get in college, you don't ever use in your employment. And people change jobs frequently over the course of a lifetime. I forget the last time that I saw the stat for an adult, but they will change jobs somewhere between 6 and 7 times now over the course of their career. Well, that's very foreign to a lot of folks who might be watching who have been at the same job or retired from a job that you worked at for a number of years. But job security is tough.
How about children? Worrying about children.
They can stress you out.
Yeah, I tend to worry more now about my grandchildren, the kind of world that we're going to give them. That one really makes me think a lot.
Yeah.
But I see people, as a pastor, they come to talk to me. I'm just worried about my son. He's not doing this, and he should be doing this, and what can I do? Or my daughter's seeing this guy, and I don't think he's a good guy, and it just drives me crazy. Kids, what do we do when we're going down that line and our children are not doing what we want them to do?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny because, I am a living, breathing example of the fact that I didn't know what I was doing when I had kids. I'd be the worst parent in the world. I was just kind of making it up as I went. But you know what? Most parents are. And yet we worry that we're not going to get it right. And here's what I've discovered that may be helpful for anybody out there is just simply that, when your parents were raising you, they didn't know what they were doing either. Now, whether you turned out all right, I guess there's that can be up for discussion. Whether I turned out all right, that can be up for discussion. But worry is certainly a part of that. Right. We need to take a break here. Okay. But before we do, I want to leave one thought, because we're going to come back and we're going to talk about how do you deal with worry and maybe some other stuff too. But when we begin to worry, what we're doing in some ways, I think, is we're making an assumption about the world. And the assumption we're making is that God no longer exists.
Yeah.
Because I tend to worry about things because I want to be in charge and I want them to run my way.
Right.
And yet, I think the message we're going to be talking about when we come back is that God tells us not to worry and that He's in charge.
Exactly.
And so we have to make a decision about that.
Right.
All right. We're going to come back. The class will continue. We're going to take this conversation and we'll join you again after the break. Welcome back to the class. Chris, I'm glad you came back. I'm glad our viewers came back.
You were worried about it, weren't you?
I was worried about it again. Yeah, this has been a really stressful episode for me. I'm worrying about a lot of things. I heard somebody say one time that worry pulls tomorrow's cloud over today's sunshine.
Yeah.
That sounds something like a good grandpa would say, one of those words of wisdom.
Yeah.
But in some ways, it really is true. We talked in the first segment about stuff that people worry about. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly not an extensive list, because we could have talked about a lot more. Mm-hmm. Because we tend to be a nation, we tend to be a people who by nature, we worry.
Right.
We left it at the end of the first segment with this idea that maybe we don't need to worry about these things as much. And so let's be practical and let's be spiritual, because those things do kind of connect together. Let's kind of go back through our list a little bit. as we worry, the things that we talked about worrying about, health. Let's start there. Yeah. What do you do when you worry about your health? How do you combat that?
One of the best things you can do is to make sure you've got a good diet. I cheat every now and then, but I try to eat the right stuff. Because if there's calories in it, it's going to go to my waistline. Okay. So that you got to have a good diet. Yeah, the exercise. My wife and I, we walk 2 miles every evening in our neighborhood. We go outside to the street and get on the sidewalk, and it's 1 mile up to the big street and 1 mile back to our house. So we do that. So you get exercise, you eat right, and you take care of yourself, and you're not going to be worried about your health. Yeah. As a matter of fact, working out, you won't have time to worry.
Worry about your health, yeah. I mean, I know a guy that walked 5 miles a day, and after that first day, he never came home again. He just kept walking. But neither here nor there. I agree. I mean, the exercise, the diet. I think the other thing I would add to the mix is being in tune with your genetic propensities. Mm-hmm. In other words, if you come from a family where heart issues have been issues in the past, then I think as you age, as you mature, as you move through life, you certainly are aware of that. That you kind of keep that on your radar. Right. If you come from a line of folks who are prone to diabetes, you kind of pay attention to that just a little bit. You want to focus in on that, especially if it looks like there's an issue coming up. And I think a lot of times common sense and wisdom really does become a strong indicator for you as well. I don't recommend the Bluebell diet. That's what I'm on. But any flavor of Bluebell ice cream, while it doesn't make you healthy, it'll put you away happy. Let me just put it that way. But that's probably not what we want to talk about. No. What else are we talking about in the first segment?
Finances. This one particularly hit me because I just was not very good at handling money in my younger days. And I was in my early 50s and pastoring a church, and my education person brought this new course in called Financial Peace, Dave Ramsey. Mm-hmm. And my wife and I really took the class just to be nice to my education person. But once I got in it, I was just dumbfounded by how much I learned. And Dave Ramsey's big thing is about becoming debt-free. Yeah. And believe me, that was one of the things that just absolutely changed our world for my wife and I, because we took it very seriously. We did the beans and rice stuff and worked and paid off everything that we had. Yeah. And it gives you a lot of freedom. So there's things, if you worry about money, there's things you can do to help you. And for me, that was a big one.
One of the things that we try to encourage people, and we always want to teach, is the Bible gives us some ideas and some principles of how to handle money and how to be wise, and that includes tithing and seeing money for what it is. Money is a resource; it's a tool. Right. And I believe that money is something that God gives you, and God gives me as a resource to use to do what we're called to do. Right. And that really is why we have it. He provides it. So our job is to be responsible, and our job is to be wise as we use it. And I think if people are biblically obedient, which is some of what Ramsey's teaching, of course, then if they have a money problem, they don't have a money problem. God has one. Right. Because I think God has made us some promises in His Word about finances that we can hold on to. Mm-hmm. And we kind of ended the first segment by talking about the fact that we want control, so we want to be God. If we'll let God be God and be faithful, I think that goes a long way toward dealing with the financial issues. But again, it does take work. And that also is something people don't want to do.
Well, I'm glad you brought tithing up, because that's the first check that I write. Is when I get paid, I write the check out and I give back to God, because you can't outgive God.
No, you cannot.
No,
you cannot.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I have a story. It's probably not the place to tell it, so I won't. But somebody wrote a tithe check and it bounced, and we had that interesting conversation about it. So you wrote a check to God that bounced? Let me explain how that happens to me. How that happens, neither here nor there. I know none of you have ever done that. and I don't recommend it. What else did we talk about in that first segment?
Oh, my goodness. You know, one thing that we didn't talk about that we really should is relationships. And, you know, people, they worry about their husbands, worry about their wives, worry about their children. I know that. But relationships are things that you can change, you know. There's so much that you can do to improve in relationship. And one of them is the number one killer in all relationships is lack of communication. So that's one thing. You communicate more with in your relationships, and you're not going to have as much to worry about with that too. But the one that we talked about towards the end of the last segment was children, worrying about children. So how do we overcome that one?
Well, I mean, parenting 101, right? I mean, I think you have to start and take a deep breath. And we did talk about the fact that, you know, we don't know what we're doing. But I think for a lot of parents, it's incredibly freeing to go back into the Old Testament, back to the book of Genesis, and remember this reality. God certainly would have been the perfect parent. He had 2 kids. They screwed up. So that lets me know as a parent, and you as a parent, that you don't have a shot. This whole thing of free will that our kids have is inevitably going to cause problems for them. They're going to make some bad choices, and they're going to do some things that we don't want them to do. And it's not a reflection on us or our parenting skills. It's more a reflection on the choices our kids make. Now, that's incredibly freeing for some parents. And so if you've ever felt like, you know, there's a lot of pressure on to do it well, you're off the hook. God understands. He has been where you are, and he's watched as his kids made mistakes, and he's watched as his kids have had to come back from those mistakes, and he kept loving his kids through those mistakes. And I think that also is an important part of this whole parenting journey. Is that you know, just like God loves us, you know, we're not perfect. Our kids aren't going to be perfect, and we're going to love them anyway. Why? We want them to be successful. I think parents make a greater mistake of trying to hover and control and manipulate their kids because they're so afraid of their kids making mistakes and embarrassing them, or not doing it right and reflecting badly on them, or they think their spiritual walk or whatever. I think we put a lot more pressure on ourselves than we need to. It's a tough job. And it's a full-time job, and it never ends. And you have adult kids, right?
I had to do. I have two adult kids. I have 2 daughters. One's 45 and one's 42.
They're going to love the fact that you just said their ages on a TV show.
Oh, yeah, they're going to love that.
I told him not to do that. He didn't listen to me. I promise I had nothing to do with that. But yeah, you have adult kids. I have adult daughters, and I'm not going to mention their ages. But I also have a middle school son. And, you know, I've discovered that for each child, at each journey, I have been a different kind of parent, maybe better. But each kid involves a little bit different parenting skill and style and touch that I think that sometimes we take for granted because we just want a formula that says this is how you be a good parent.
Well, you know, there's a passage of scripture that I probably read it once a week, and that's Matthew chapter 6 and verses 25 through 34, where, you know, it's the passage on worry in the Bible. And it's amazing. Every time I read that, I usually get a little glimmer of newness from it. Something that I've always missed when I read it. I'll pick up on something. And I love the way it ends. I'm just going to kind of paraphrase it. Verse 34, it says, you know, don't borrow from tomorrow to worry about it today. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And that mentor that I told you about, who said, you know, if it were to happen, would it be the end of the world? He also used to say that. He said, Chris, you realize that probably 95, 96% of the things that we worry about never happen? And that's absolutely true. So,
well, worry is kind of like a rocking chair, right? I mean, it gives you something to do, but you don't get anywhere.
Right.
So you just stay in place the whole time. It never moves forward. And I think I think too, Jesus is the ultimate voice in teaching us not to worry. I always go back to that passage where he's there in Mary and Martha and Lazarus' house, and Mary is sitting at his feet and wanting to learn, and Martha is buzzing around, and she gets upset, and she gets herself into this whirling mess of emotion. And Jesus basically has this moment where he says, Martha, Martha, you are worried about so many things. But Mary's chosen what's important. I think worry sometimes is one of Satan's greatest tools to get our focus off where it needs to be.
Right.
And if we're not careful, we become extremely good at worrying. And sometimes I fear that we may be better at worrying than we are at following God.
Right.
And I think that becomes that moment where we got to be really, really careful not to fall into that category.
You like the passage on worry?
Yeah, I do. I mean, you know, it puts things in perspective, right? I mean, because I like to be a forward-thinking guy. I like thinking about what's next. I'm always moving to what's next. But at the same time, for me, one of the lessons I've had to learn and struggle with is, you know, don't get so fast moving toward tomorrow and toward the future and worrying about getting it right that you miss the moments that you're in today. And I think that worry steals a lot of joy from our life,
Right.
and causes us not to just see each moment for what it is, enjoy it. You know, again, the passage says, tomorrow's got enough trouble of its own, right? I mean, there's always stuff to worry about. So if you're looking to worry, I'm looking to worry, our audience is looking to worry, you can find that. That's easy. But I think the decision not to worry and to give whatever it is to Jesus, I know that sounds hyper-spiritual, but that's kind of what gets it to today.
You know that passage also, that verse 33, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and these things will be added unto you. So that's the place to begin with. And I'd say this too, do you have a good church home? I tell you, we have a great church at 434, and we have a great pastor. I love listening to Pastor
good.
Jeff.
He's so good.
He is excellent.
He is good, yeah.
But, you know, having a church home, having a church family, that'll take a lot of stress out of you. You know, is the church perfect? Absolutely not, because we're in it. But it can help you a lot with the relationships. I found out about the finances at church, you know, through Dave Ramsey thing. You know, health. Isn't it great to have people praying for you?
Yeah.
And even children, having other parents that walk beside you and say, you know, we had that problem too, but, you know, it worked out. And, you know, you get encouragement at church. So don't ever take church lightly, because it can be a great help to overcome worry.
And I think the Clash is a great place to come.
Absolutely.
To overcome worry. And so let's end this episode with, you know, I think a good source. You said it a minute ago. Let's end it with the Bible.
Right.
Seek first the kingdom of God, and all of these things will be added unto you. I think for us, a good ending is that place of beginning in our lives. If we'll seek first the kingdom,
Right.
I think the things that we worry about and stress about will kind of fall into place if our focus is on God first.
Right.
And I don't think we can add a whole lot to that, can we?
Yeah.
Okay, so we won't. But I do want to thank you, Chris, once again, because it's great having this conversation. I hope our guests have enjoyed it. I guess maybe they ought to come back next week. But between now and next week, what piece of advice do we need to give them about life?
Well, I would say don't worry.
I think that's good. I think that's good advice. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Don't tap out.